Here's an interesting task for you. We are asked to take a little bit of information here and prove some additional information right there, namely that angle A is congruent to angle D. Angle A is here and angle D is over there. Now we're going to use congruence of triangles to show this. If I know that two triangles are congruent, I have all sorts of information about different corresponding parts being congruent to each other. So I'm going to draw these two triangles separate from each other. And we will start to put some information in to see if we can prove these are congruent. Now I have this side, AB is congruent to BD, that was given in this picture. I have this side and this side that are congruent to each other. And this third side right here is really the same line, that's BC right there. So this third side of each triangle is congruent to each other. That gives us enough information for the side-side-side congruence theorem. Now, because these two are congruent, we can say all sorts of things. I know that angle A is congruent to angle D, this angle C here is congruent to this angle C, and this angle B is congruent to this angle B, and we have lots of information that comes from this statement right here. And one of those pieces of information indeed was this. We now know that angle A is congruent to angle D, like we wanted to show, because they are corresponding parts in two congruent triangles. Let's take a look at a second diagram. This one asks us to prove things about the line segments, that JM and LM are congruent to each other. So JM's here, LM is right there. Again, let's draw these separate from each other so we can prove that these two triangles are congruent. J, K, M, and L, K, M. We know that this and this side are congruent because it's given in our picture. We know that this side right here is congruent to that side right there. We know that this angle right here is congruent to that angle. Let me explain why. You notice in this picture that this is a straight line, so these two angles add up to 90 or 180 degrees. This one is 90 degrees. So this one also must be a 90-degree angle in order to add up to 180 degrees. So we've got two sides and an angle here that are congruent. Now this is not in the right order though. The angle is not in between these two sides. It's not our included angle, so we don't have enough information. Let's see if we can dig a little deeper and get one more piece of information. You will notice if we take a look at this whole triangle, it is an isosceles triangle. And we know that if these two angles or sides are congruent, then the angles opposite those sides, right here and here, are congruent to each other. That gives us an additional piece of information here. And if these two angles are congruent, then that third angle must also be congruent. So that gives us a lot of information. Okay, we now have an angle, we have a side, and we have an angle. So this set of information right there is enough to tell us that these two are congruent. So the angle, side, angle congruence theorem. If these two triangles are congruent to each other and these are corresponding parts, these must also be congruent to each other, and that finishes it out. We now know that JM is congruent to LM right here. Thank you.